Alright, today I thought we'd take a look at my e-bike, which has been put together largely from stuff that I got either free or very cheap. Hopefully you can hear me alright here because the wind is pretty bad at the moment. But yeah, this I've been riding on for quite a while now. I've done about 1,373.9 kilometers on it as of this recording, which is a fair amount for a bicycle. And yeah, this I put together from an old e-bike frame. So it was the rear motor, the frame, and the two wheels, and a lot of the plastic trim. I got that on Facebook Marketplace for very cheap because the guy had taken it apart and had never gotten around to putting it back together again, and the whole thing was in pieces. And so I bought that, and over time I added, it was originally designed for 3 12-volt lead acid batteries that go in this case, which I've since replaced with a 42-volt lithium battery pack. And yeah, that works. Not only is it a lot lighter than the lead acid batteries, but you get a whole lot more range from that than you definitely would from lead acid. And over time, I've added things like rear turn signals, front turn signals. It's got a horn, headlights, one of those angel eye style lights with a focused beam in the middle and then an outer ring on the outside there. And it's got a twist throttle and a key switch with a voltage meter. It's hard to, it looks flickery on camera, but it's not flickery in real life. That's just the multiplexing. So currently at around 37.8 volts, and I've done, how many? Let's see, I've done 20.9 kilometers on a charge so far. So that's 37 out of 4.2 volts fully charged. And when you turn the key on, I've wired it so that the outer ring is always on. And then if you press the headlight switch, the light comes on. It has 3 settings: bright, dim, and then this strobing effect, which will give everyone coming towards you a seizure, so I don't really use that. And the twist grip throttle with the key switch and the voltmeter was a cheap eBay find. The switches here for the headlight, the turn signals, and the horn were from Temu. They were really, really cheap. So we've got a horn, and yeah, there's the headlight switch, turn signals. If you can see that in the sunlight there. There you go. And this switch here is wired to the motor controller. Has a inbuilt cruise control function, so that if you hold the throttle at a certain speed for a certain length of time, it'll then continue to hold at that speed even when you let go of the throttle until you hit one of the brakes. As you can see, there's wires going to switches on each of the brake levers. And this switch I just added so you could turn that function off if you wanted to, because, you know, sometimes it gets a bit annoying when you're going along and then you let go of the throttle and the thing still keeps going. So if you don't want cruise control on, you can turn it off with that. And the battery pack itself, there's a lithium pack mounted inside this old casing, which was originally used for the lead acid batteries. The connector's a bit strange. It uses an IEC like computer power connector style plug, which seems to work fine. There's no issues with that. There's a button here to turn the battery pack off at the main source there, so you can shut the thing off completely. That's the horn there. That was also from Temu, very cheap, seems to work well. This is just a generic little bicycle speedometer, which you know, counts the distance and your max speed, average speed, all of that stuff. And that works off of a Hall effect sensor attached to the front fork. and then there's a little magnet attached to the spoke, and as it goes around, as long as you've calculated the circumference of the wheel correctly, it'll get an accurate speed reading. And I've checked this against a GPS speedometer, and it's pretty much spot on in terms of speed accuracy. So on flat ground, it'll do, I think it's a 350 watt motor. On flat ground, it'll do about 30 kilometers an hour. Uphill, it starts to slow down, and the steeper the hill goes, you kind of have to pedal along to help it along, because it doesn't really have the power to get up steep hills on its own. But yeah, on flat ground, it does it no problem. Unfortunately, the area I live in, there's hills absolutely everywhere, so it's not ideal. But yeah, and then when you're going downhill, it'll do over 50 k's an hour easy, obviously, because you've got gravity helping you. One cool thing is that the motor and the controller do seem to have some sort of built-in regen. So when you're going downhill, it actually starts to put power back into the battery. You can watch the voltage meter rise. And a couple of times I've actually gone fast enough that it's tripped the overcharge protection on the lithium battery, because it's gone over 42 volts while you're going down the hill there. So it's actually tried to overcharge the battery and trip the protection, and then you have to switch off, wait a couple of seconds, switch it back on again to reset it. So the first time it happened, I was like, oh, what is going on here? I thought that the controller had failed, or there was some other electrical fault, but it was actually that it was getting so much regen, it was trying to overcharge the battery. So these days I just watch the speed and the voltage, and try and keep it below the point where it would try to overcharge the battery. This mirror here is just a generic thing that was ordered online. It's not the best. It works, but it flops around in the breeze, and yeah, that's it's very cheap and loosey-goosey. In fact, the mountings it came with were actually too big for the handlebars. Yes, I had to cut a bit of PVC pipe and wrap it around it to act as a spacer, so that it would actually stay in place. Otherwise, it was just falling over all the time, which got kind of annoying. The back has a little rack on it. I added this bag here just to store like anything that I need or that I buy from the shops or whatever. This is just a generic like bicycle rear strobe light that I want to replace with a proper 12 volt LED light, and maybe a brake light as well. So because this requires me to plug it in and charge it when the battery and that runs out, whereas the headlights and the turn signals, they work off of the main battery. Because underneath the foot pad here, there is where the controller is, I've got a DC-DC converter to convert the 42 volts from the battery pack down to 12 volts to run the normal electrical stuff, so the headlamp, the turn signals, and the horn. So those run off 12 volts, and so I could easily put a 12 volt rear tail and brake light, but I've yet to find a decent one that's cheap. They all seem to be really expensive for some reason. But when I get one, I'll fit one there, and then I can ditch that thing, which doesn't work very well anyway. And yeah, for what I paid for this thing, which was not much in total, with the bike frame being cheap, the battery was something I got cheap, and all the sort of Chinese switch gear that's been added to it, it's done really, really well. Like I said, I've done over 1,300 kilometers in total on this thing, and it's still going strong. The front tire, I've had to replace the inner tube in multiple times because the roads here are a disaster and absolutely full of glass, screws, nails, everything that would destroy a tire. So eventually I replaced that with a tube that's got like a sealant or a glue in it. It's supposed to self-seal when it gets a puncture, and it was quite a bit more expensive than the regular inner tube, but so far it seems to be doing well, and I haven't had a puncture since I replaced that. Weirdly enough, the rear tire has never gotten a puncture. I did replace the inner tube on it just because the one that was in it was old, but I've never had a puncture on that, which is kind of a good thing, because removing this whole rear wheel assembly is a massive pain in the ass, because you've got to take the kickstand off, you've got to take the rear drum brake off, you've got to take the chain off, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm glad that one hasn't had any issues yet, because removing that is a massive pain. The motor itself is actually quite beefy. I'm willing to bet, even though the controller is 350 watts, you could probably, if you wanted to, you could probably upgrade that to 500, maybe even 700 watts, and that motor would probably handle it fine, because it doesn't even really get warm. Well, it gets warm, but it doesn't get hot when you're riding along, even up hills for a decent length of time. So I think you could put more power through that motor than it's currently being made to handle. So that might be something worth looking into in the future, is replacing the controller with a bit more powerful one and seeing if we can get a bit more speed and a bit more hill climbing ability out of that. And seat is decent, it's got some tears in it, but it's well padded and pretty comfortable for someone as lightweight and bony as I am. I don't like a hard seat. I need something that's got decent cushioning on it. And yeah, that's my cheap half DIY Frankenstein-ish e-bike, if you will. So hopefully someone will find this video interesting, or entertaining at least. And the wind is starting to pick up again, so we'll catch you on the next one.